Hi there, freelance friends. Thank you for joining me again. Today, I want to talk about an important topic, and it is where you get your clients. So today we'll talk about freelancing with an agency. Obviously, there are pros and cons of using a middleman rather than going direct, and I'd like to take you through them today. Because when you step into the world of freelancing, how to find work is really one of the biggest decisions that you're going to make as a freelancer. Obviously, some freelancers love the independence and a little bit of a challenge of securing their own clients. Other freelancers prefer partnering with staffing agencies or project-based agencies that connect them with steady opportunities. Now, personally, I've done both. And over the years, I've had the privilege of working with some of the biggest companies in the world through the agency partnerships that I have made. I feel like these experiences have taught me a lot about how the two paths can be different. So if you're wondering whether working through an agency is right for you, hopefully this is a clear-eyed look at the pros and cons. So let's start with the pros. What are the pros of freelancing with an agency? The first is obviously a steady stream of opportunities. That is probably one of the biggest perks of working with an agency. It's the reduced hustle because you don't have to constantly pitch or cold call new clients. Agencies already have a roster of clients and active projects. They simply need reliable freelancers to fill the roles. Now, I appreciate this because this way, I don't have to spend hours hunting for new projects. I can have consistent work that comes through the various agencies that I work with, and that allows me to focus my time and energy on delivering quality training and development rather than chasing leads. Second is the administrative support that you get when you are dealing with an agency. And that's because agencies often handle the logistical side of freelancing. They handle the contracts, the NDAs, the invoicing, the client onboarding. So for me, this is actually one of my favorite parts of agency work. I am happy to let someone else handle the paperwork so I can stay focused on creating and facilitating learning experiences. The admin side has never been my passion, so this setup is a win for me. Third, which I already briefly mentioned, is that oftentimes when you're working with an agency, you do get access to big name clients because many agencies partner with those household name brands that individual freelancers may not as easily reach on their own. For me, through these agency collaborations, I have been able to work with some of the world's leading companies, names that you would all recognize: Ernst & Young, Johnson & Johnson, Moody's. I could go on, and these are experiences that have really sharpened my skills and exposed me to global standards of excellence. I've found it rewarding to know that my work contributes to projects for organizations that have such a broad, often global impact. Fourth, you have access to networking and repeat work. Once you establish yourself as a reliable partner, which does take a little bit of time, but probably less time than you expect, agencies will often call you for repeat gigs or refer you to other projects. I know that this has certainly happened with me. Sometimes you even get the ability to work on a project that was before it was publicized. So this can create a steady rhythm of work without you having to constantly chase the next lead. So in summary, I think that building these long-term relationships with agency partners can give you the stability in what can otherwise be an unpredictable freelance world. The agencies that I deal with regularly know my strengths. They know the projects that are in my wheelhouse, and I can count on them to match me with a project that aligns to my skill set. But of course, everything isn't always on the sunny side of the fence. There are cons of freelancing with an agency. The most significant one is that you will get a lower pay rate than you likely would going independently. And that's because agencies take a cut. I mean, after all, they're handling the client acquisition and operations. So as a result, you're going to typically earn less than you would billing the client directly. Now, it is just a reality. The agency rates are a bit lower. But for me, the trade-off is often worth it. I value the consistency and reduced workload that comes with agency work, even if it means sacrificing a little on my rate. So while I do work directly with several clients, the clients that I do work with independently are generally people who I know, who I have a little bit of an established relationship with. And that isn't always the case when I'm working with an agency. I am willing in that case to work with a new client if I feel like it aligns. Next, you have less control over your client relationships. When you freelance with an agency, the client belongs to them. So depending on the way that they operate, you may not be able to market yourself directly. Most oftentimes you can't. You can't negotiate your rate with the client, and you can't go and do work for them directly without the permission of one of these agencies in most cases. So because I do tend to build strong relationships with the clients that I work with, this is sometimes a restrictive aspect for me. But I have learned to just focus on nurturing the great working relationship within the structure I'm given. And it has worked for me so far. Third, sometimes you have less creative or strategic input. It depends on the agency. This isn't always the case, but sometimes freelancers are brought in for specific tasks rather than strategy or creative direction. So you may not have insight into the client's goals or the freedom to shape the project beyond your assigned goals. And I know that sometimes this is the one that sticks with me a little bit because I have been in the industry for a while. I have a lot of experience, and I really enjoy that task of helping to frame creative direction. I'm not saying it never happens with an agency. I have managed to find a lot of projects where that's what I'm used for because that is one of my superpowers. But I have also been on projects that do have that limited creative or strategic input. Fourth is project uncertainty. So even though agencies can offer consistent leads, their workload also fluctuates. So if you are working with an agency and one of their major clients pauses or ends a contract that you're working on, your assignments may dry up suddenly. And I have had that happen. Luckily, I have always worked with multiple clients, but I do have some colleagues that I've worked with over the years who have been dramatically impacted by something like this because they were only working with one client through an agency. But that's the nature of freelancing, agency or not. So this is why I feel like you do need to really learn to manage your workload and your finances with flexibility so that those dips don't throw you off balance. Essentially, it's all about balance and finding that right balance. For me, I mostly partner with agencies, as I mentioned, because I appreciate the ease and consistency that they bring to my freelance life. Working with an agency allows me to focus on the work itself rather than spending hours on client outreach or project management. But with that said, as I mentioned, I also do take on direct clients, but these for me are typically people or organizations that I already have a relationship with. It's those people who reach out to me because they're familiar with my work and they want to collaborate with me directly. For me, this mix gives me the best of both worlds. I have a steady flow and structure of agency work, plus I have the creative freedom that comes with working one-on-one with clients that I know and trust. So you probably determined from listening to this podcast that I don't feel like freelancing with an agency is better or worse than going solo. It's just a different model, and you have to determine what fits for you. The old "you do you" saying. The key is knowing what stage you're in, what you value the most. For instance, is it freedom? Is it income? Or is it consistency? And then choose the approach that supports your goals right now. You're going to also find that your freelance career is going to evolve. And so will your mix of working with agencies and direct clients, most likely. But the beauty of freelancing is that you get to design it on your terms, whether you're working through an agency or direct to a client. If you found this information helpful, please like and subscribe. I'd love to see you on the next episode. Until then, take care. Bye-bye.